if the producers out there are going to say that rappers need to invest into their careers by buying beats, then we need to invest time into our careers to actually learn how to make good beats. Sad because it's a restaurant I really like. Anyway, episode 175. It's the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast powered by BeatStars. BeatStars.live is the place to catch our music business mentorship program every Monday and Thursday at 3 p.m. And it's completely free. You don't have to sign up for anything at all. Just log in, join the conversation. Dame, how are you feeling this morning? It's the post-Thanksgiving episode.
I'm feeling okay. I mean, I had obviously yesterday wasn't your traditional Thanksgiving. I did see some fam. But yeah, man, it's tough to celebrate Thanksgiving. I mean, I know there's this controversy around the holiday itself, but this year in particular, with so many people struggling, so many highs and lows, a lot of lows this year, and it's hard to, obviously you want to be thankful for even breathing and being able to be around family. And luckily I haven't had anybody super close to me, pass from COVID. I've had some people that are close to me have some really hard times, but, in addition to COVID, obviously, a lot of people don't have anything to eat. A lot of people struggling. So it's just a tough year, man. But overall, the day went cool. And I'm feeling good.
So you and I have gone on a long streak of agreeing with each other, and today that ends.
No, I don't think it ends.
No, this is the Royal Rumble.
You said episode. I'm assuming. I want people to know that this isn't episode 175. That was a joke, right? You just don't laugh when you say that. When you make your jokes.
Oh, my bad. It's episode 75.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna laugh after that. I was like, I thought you were gonna laugh after that, but then you didn't. I was like, well, maybe that was just another pain joke. But this is episode 75. We didn't just jump 100 episodes.
It just rolled off the tongue. It's 2020. Anything can happen. I can jump 100 episodes if I want. But yeah, so on episode 75, which is 3/4 of the way to 100, which is a milestone, we have to have this battle royale. Dame tweeted a bunch of stuff about how he was about to go off on me on this episode. So it all started when I put that part was a joke. It all started when I posted this tweet about the music business being toxic, and obviously, everything we post is contentious. It's whether it's a tweet or whether it's a small clip from an hour-long episode, it's hard to put everything into context. So I'm just going to preface it by saying that before Dame cusses me out. My tweet said, nobody is saying landlords should be getting free houses, fam. The people who build them can get backends, but we debate whether producers should be paid for beats, if rappers should get paid for shows, if graphic designers should work for free, ... So I'm just I'll let you respond because this was my post.
Well, I think we're gonna agree in a large percentage, because obviously I think people should get paid for their work. Where I disagree, and this is not even necessarily what you're talking to, but I think it is like, I've seen producers post memes that say, exposure doesn't pay my bills, right? So like some people are like, oh, you'll get a lot of exposure, so you might as well do this. And a lot of times that's, people are just trying to get free work. But I wouldn't undervalue like exposure and an opportunity to build relationships in exchange for free work. Your specific examples, in terms of houses and things like that, obviously nobody is getting free rent and stuff or that, but there is a lot of industries where, well, I don't know if a lot, but there are industries where you do work for free in order to get in the door. And I used to be a stockbroker's assistant for a summer. I did hella work for free because I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker when I was younger. So for the whole summer, I was just making cold calls, getting rejected hundreds of times a day, doing stuff that I probably wasn't supposed to do at my age. I didn't have a license or anything, but I was trying to get people on the phone, trying to get them to buy stocks and bonds over the phone. So that is, and I just think that if you do want to get in the door, sometimes you might have to work for free. Even as a manager, right? Like if there was somebody that I really wanted to work with, and they didn't really understand my value yet, but I really wanted to work with them. I really believed in their potential. I don't mind just, helping them out for a short period of time so that I can show, kind of what my value is and what I bring to the table. So, you can respond and maybe your tweet wasn't necessarily about that, but the larger discussion that I would like to have is like, there are opportunities where exposure is worth more than money. And, a lot of producers coming up, you might want to do some work for free to build that relationship, because that relationship is going to be more valuable than anything that they could pay you at the time. So it just conjured up those your tweet conjured up those experiences for me. I mean, all in all, I do think people should get paid they should get compensated for the work. But when I see that, especially that one meme in particular, where I can't pay my bill with exposure, maybe not now, but if it's the right exposure, you'll be able to pay your bills later. So I just hate when I see that. And then when I see that, you always see a bunch of like super inexperienced producers with no connections, nothing, shitting on exposure when that's probably what you need at that point. So that's what it conjured up for me. So you can tell me where I took that the wrong way or.
Well, damn, I think we mostly agree. I was expecting a whole fiery anti-pain rant, and I didn't get that. I thought that was going to energize me. Anyway, there is actually one point that you made that I do want to disagree with, which is that producers starting out need exposure. I don't fully disagree, anyway, let me just rant for a minute, because this post and then the post prior to that brought up a lot of topics. And the thing with, as I said earlier, posting these kinds of tweets or video clips or whatever, it's all up to interpretation of whoever is watching, because they're so short. It's micro content. So people want to build around the frame of whatever thing we post, and oftentimes they're not building with the same floor plan as us. So we always hear people say time is money. And when you're developing a skill or a profession, you invest time in yourself, and sometimes money if you're in a trade or like a degree program. So for example, to become a teacher, you need to invest in 4 to 5 years of school. So you're paying for that tuition and you're paying in time. And, you could get paid along the way as like a tutor or something, which is what I did. I worked in youth services and had jobs because I actually got a teaching degree. And along the way, I wasn't a teacher, but I would do jobs that were within the education and youth service field, but I couldn't get a teacher's salary. I couldn't get the benefits that come with being a licensed educator. So same with being a lawyer. You don't charge for legal services while you're still in law school and you don't actually have a license to practice law. So when I was a producer starting out, making beats, I was in a development phase. So nobody needed to be paying me for beats. My expertise was not worth their money. I wasn't developed enough. My talent as a producer, my expertise level, what I shouldn't have been doing consultations. I wasn't asking for a bunch of money for my beats because I wasn't ready for that. So I do not believe that every person deserves to be paid for their time no matter what. Like, I'm not paying someone for graphic design if their product is trash and they just started last week. They're still putting their time in. Maybe they invested some money in Adobe Creative Cloud. That doesn't mean they're entitled to my money. They need to develop with other people who are at their level and just grow together. That makes sense to me. And I'm also not saying, because a lot of people freak out about this stuff when I start talking about this. I'm not saying a producer and rapper can't partner on a project. You hear that all the time. You say, why don't more producers partner with rappers? They do all the time, and they can. I just think it has to be an equal partnership, and they have to be on the same page. It can't be a producer that started out last week and a rapper that already has 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. It can't be a multi-platinum producer and a rapper who's not even willing to spend $20 on a beat lease. These aren't compatible situations to me, and they're not fair and equal situations. Here is my concern, and this is what this tweet was about. The culture of music, and not just rapper hip hop. I hate when people are like, it's all about urban music. They're just, people are unprofessional there. You see it happen everywhere, rock, country, whatever. We've normalized this starving artist cliche, and there's this expectation of free work that doesn't really have a stopping point. When people talk about lawyers, they never say, yeah, lawyers are cheap. I got so many cheap free lawyers out there. They talk about how expensive lawyers are and how serious that profession is. But when you hear people talk about a video director or a beat maker, you often hear them say, oh, yeah, I got a guy who'll do it for free. We got to find someone who will do it for free. They got to do it for free. They should do it for free. And think about all the recording artists and musicians that get booked for shows and festivals that aren't getting paid. The promoter will say, this will be good exposure for you. So I agree in certain instances, if there's an arena full of people and someone says, yeah, I'm going to give you a 15-minute slot to rap for these 10,000 people, you should probably do that. That kind of exposure is good. But a lot of people will weaponize exposure, and it might be 100 capacity venue, and they'll say, yeah, you should rap for free. And meanwhile, they're pocketing money. And the way I feel is if they're pocketing money and you're a part of that process, then you should be cut in because you were a part of that. My problem is just that it seems like this is more of a issue in the musician creative community than other professions. And I'm not saying individuals can't create their own favorable situations using free work. I'm talking about this overarching narrative that people tend to generalize and apply to more situations than they should. The idea of weaponizing exposure, the idea of working for backends, the idea of paying dues, the idea of doing it for the love. These are all things that people will use to convince somebody to do free work for them that will never benefit that other person.
I mean, and I know this happens, and I know that sometimes people weaponize it, but like you use that as like that's what people are always like. You use that like that's what people are always doing. Like I see more often than not, like it's not necessarily just trying to get free work. It may be an unrealistic idea, but like the rapper really thinks this shit is about to blow, and like you're gonna be a part of this. Like in their mind, they're really gonna take off. So it's not necessarily like, hey, let me squeeze. Some people are trying to get free work, but I think there's also this delusion in a lot of rappers' mind that like this shit is really about to blow. So you better you better be a part of this. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be a part of this, I can't compensate you, but your name's going to be on it and it's going to lead to more work. So, I agree that some people do probably weaponize it and they're just trying to get stuff for free. But I also think there's a few buckets. There's a people weaponizing it, trying to get things for free. I think there's other people that are just delusional or just believe that this shit's about to take off when it's probably really not. And they're trying to get you on board early. But then there are really people that know what their platform is worth. And they know that, the people that I work with, I know that our graphic designer has gotten work based off my recommendations. Like Elvis, who does a lot of work for BeatStars and for us. I've always paid him, but I know for a fact, because I've posted about him several times in the Facebook group, and I know people have reached out. So, it just depends on who's co-signing your work, what platform, does it have a trusted audience, and you will get work based off of that. So there's different tranches, and I just don't think everybody's trying to weaponize it. But I think you have to be in this industry long enough and have some experiences, some bad to learn from, to identify where exposure, where the exposure is bullshit and where the exposure will eventually lead to some relationships that will turn into money in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and I don't want to make it seem as though everybody's doing that or that's what's happening in the majority of the scenarios that I encounter with artists. But the burden is really on us as the person being offered that offer to figure out if it actually makes sense. And so the issue is a lot of us don't. So you have people who, I hate the phrase "the blind are leading the blind," but it's like it's the ignorant leading the ignorant, or the ignorant negotiating with the ignorant. And you have so many people chiming into the conversation, and there were tons of comments on that Instagram post from people who just didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but they had really strong opinions of exactly what rappers should do or exactly what producers should do when they work together. And I just really want to zero in on this backend conversation, because that just keeps coming up. And it happened to me, like I do this for a living. So I certainly, the majority of rappers that I work with are professional and respectful. I don't know what's been happening the last 2 months. My DMs have just been really weird. And a lot of it has been people giving me strange offers. Like someone last night was like, send me a free beat with no tags and I'll upload it to my YouTube channel and I'll give you credit. And his YouTube channel hadn't been posted on for over 3 years. So yeah, to me, this person's not going to help me out. Why am I going to spend my time and energy giving him I don't even know if he's good or not. I just looked at the numbers and they weren't there. So in his mind, somehow that was a reasonable and fair trade. I have 102,000 subscribers that I work my ass off for, and I put content out every single day. He has like 37 subscribers and hasn't uploaded anything in 3 years. Somehow that's an even exchange in his mind. And that's where I think, okay, there has to be manipulation here. You can't possibly think your platform is the same as mine. There's no way. There is no way.
He probably didn't even think about it like that. He probably didn't, maybe he didn't even, and maybe that he just sent this message to so many people that he didn't even take the time to research the individual platforms. He just started DMing people.
No, it wasn't. It was meant for me. It was a reply actually to an email I had sent him. So that's where
He's just an idiot.
Well, yeah. So then I walk away from those situations. But it's just, where does it become an intentional lie and an unintentional lie? Because some people will tell me all the time, work for free in exchange for the back ends, or you'll see on our page all the time comments, producers should be focusing on the back ends. Producers should do. Number one, I get those no matter what, because I created the song. I own the copyrights to that beat. Unless I'm really ignorant and I somehow explicitly transfer them over to you for nothing in exchange, that'd be really stupid. But I've asked so many artists.
But let's even debate that though. Like, cause obviously when you create a piece of music, you own the master and the publishing to that. And you're saying if you sign the master over to, an artist, what are your expectations in return? Like, do you always need, under what are certain scenarios in which you would do that, and how much would that cost?
I mean, pretty much everyone does that with the major labels and the independent labels when they sell the beat, but they pay for that.
Right. So I guess let me just throw out a specific scenario, because this is what I've done. But I work with artists that are going to do some decent streams. So, but even for that 1 week notice project, like the producers got 20% of the stream. They got their 50% publishing and 20%, 20%. Yeah. 20% of the streaming income. Is that fair to you?
So it
Would you
was okay. So they were getting
like that?
50% of some of the streaming income, and then 20% of the master streaming income.
Yeah. So 50% of the publishing and then 20% of the income and but no advance up front. Under where would the artist like would you agree to that, and how big would an artist have to be for you to agree to that deal?
I mean, there are certainly scenarios in which I would agree to that and not even have it be about the money if I'm working on the whole project. Like I said, I'm not talking about individual situations. People can
But
work out their.
that's why these conversations are so hard, and it actually relates to the post that I made prior to your post,
Mhm.
which where I said, not everybody's experience and advice applies to you.
Right.
Like there's a lot of information that's being shared on our platform, in Clubhouse, on Twitter. Like everybody's sharing information. A lot of it's just shitty information, just in general, but like even the good information, it's not for everybody. And that's why you have to know enough about the business to be able to parcel like, okay, that applies to me, but my business is set up this way and my goal is this and my resources are this. So I know that this information doesn't apply to my business. So you have to have some knowledge of the business, and you have to have an understanding of what your goals are, what your resources are, where you're at in your career, to really understand like whose information you should hold on to. And then maybe it's information that applies to you, but only applies to you next year when you get to another level. Right. That's
Right.
why these conversations are so hard. And
Yep.
that's why I think, that's why the Music Entrepreneur Club exists, so we can have the dialogue, and artists can learn when to incorporate experience and advice from somebody else and when to not.
Right. Because I can listen to your offer and hear you say, all right, co-ownership of the publishing and 20% on the master. 20% is over 5 times higher than what most labels offer. So if there's some kind of marketing component or investment from the people that I'm delivering this master to, and I don't know what the agreement said, I guess you're in that scenario, the producers are transferring their master copyright to whatever entity is releasing it, which is you at that point. And did they get paid anything for that?
No, that like the agreement. No, there's no upfront advance. And in the beginning, like this is how dumb I was in the beginning. Like Funk Body, we started paying producers, but I didn't even know that typically was supposed to be in advance. So we just paid producers, and then just started paying them as well. So that
Oh,
producers got additional money out of us in like the first couple of years. So it was like, all right, whatever. That was our bad. Like I didn't know that it's typically supposed to be in advance.
so you were giving them a non-recoupable advance.
Right. Because I just thought that was how it was supposed to work.
I dream of those. Some producers do get them.
Right. No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like I always say, when you negotiate stuff with people, everybody just needs to understand exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Everybody has to agree to it. And then everybody has to follow through on the commitments, so no matter what that is, if you're happy with it, you're happy with it.
Yeah.
That's advice that I recently got from Marshawn Lynch. Random that I was on a Zoom call with him, but he was just like, the way he negotiated his deal was in the NFL was never like taking into account what the next running back got. It's just like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I'm happy with. And as long as you follow through with the payment, then that's what we'll agree to.
Yeah, but that's not always how it works, especially in the music business. You see so many people posting their contracts saying, I hate this part, I don't agree with this part, yet their signatures on that same sheet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're right. These conversations are difficult to have, but at the end of the day, it's absolutely about what you know and what you're comfortable agreeing with, because You're right. Every scenario is different, and a scenario that you might say, I'll never do that in my life. It might come along, and it might be a passion project where, you know, that doesn't even matter to you. The financial elements don't even matter to you, or the working with that person or working on that opportunity is more important than anything else. I absolutely understand. That's why I want to make it clear that I'm just talking about overarching narratives, because a lot of producers are on, like you said, are giving bad advice based on their own inexperience. Some of them are saying stupid stuff on the aggressive side of the spectrum, like don't ever sell anything for under 50 million because Dr. Dre gets 50 million per beat. So then you have a bunch of dumbass producers saying, "Oh, I'd never sell an exclusive beat for 1,000. That's crazy," when they've never sold a non-exclusive beat for 20. And then on the other side, you have the producers who are saying, "Yeah, you need to work with all these artists and get your backends, get your publishing." Publishing doesn't mean shit in the age of streaming. I mean, it means something, but not very much. So if you're not fully educated on what the current state of the business really is and where you fit in and how you can get something out of your hard work, then that's terrible advice. I do want to share something on the side of the spectrum of bad producer advice that I think is a little hyper aggressive in terms of advocating for all producers. So we got a comment. Well, I got a comment. It's on our shared our shared video. You posted this. It was when we were talking about what were we talking about? Producers complaining about rappers not paying for beats. I know you brought up those memes. I hate those memes. I think it just causes division, and it makes producers seem like we're just money hungry. And so I want to talk about that. So one of the statements I made in the video was, you know, if you're a producer and you're complaining about not getting paid by rappers all the time and you've only been making beats for a year or two, shut up. And I stand by that. Shut up. If you're offended, I don't know, go somewhere else and shut up. Go in a closet and shut up. Or, you know, talk to someone that wants to hear you complain. Talk to your aunt, your mother, your nephews. I don't care. I personally think you should shut up, and here's why. So someone responded, "No, you shut up. I'm supposed to undermine myself because I've been making beats for less than a year. Eat a dick." Good comment. I clicked on
check out his beats and just to make sure he's not some prodigy that like was able to master making beats in 6 months. Like that is possible, I guess.
It is possible, and I considered that possibility, and I listened to his beats and they were terrible. And it's okay to be terrible. It's okay. He like he said, he hasn't been making beats for more than a year. I sometimes make terrible beats today. All producers make terrible beats starting out. Everybody makes terrible something when they're first starting. But he's saying he deserves to be paid. And the fact of the matter is he doesn't. He owns his own business, and so that's all on him. And so many producers criticize rappers for not paying for beats, but we as producers don't criticize ourselves for thinking we're entitled to rappers' money. We're not entitled to rappers' money. If the producers out there are going to say that rappers need to invest into their careers by buying beats, then we need to invest time into our careers to actually learn how to make good beats. We need to invest. It's not a fair conversation to say rappers have to buy beats. Rappers have to invest in their careers to buy beats. If we're not going to invest in ourselves enough to make beats worth buying. Now, the guy that told me to eat a dick had 3 beats available for sale. He hadn't put in enough work to be in his feelings. I mean, he's entitled to be in his feelings and get offended and all that, but that's not going to make his beat sell. And this is an issue with a lot of creatives. You don't become a lawyer after 3 weeks in law school, and you don't become a professional producer after uploading 3 mediocre beats to the internet. So every producer makes trash beats. This isn't meant to discourage anybody, because producers invest time into their craft and they get better. You know, so embrace that beginner stage and be experimental, you know, and make your mistakes, because the risk factor is low at that point. You know, that's the fun part. You get to make weird ass beats and tell other producers to eat a dick and have a ball. Like I can't do. I wish I could tell people to eat a dick all day on social media. I can't because my brand is established and it's a bad look for me. So enjoy that privilege, whatever this producer's name is. But the thing is, don't let money be the hang up. You know, you're not entitled to money. Just make good content and learn about the business, and the money's going to come that way. And that should motivate you, not discourage you. So a lot of people are triggered by this conversation, and it feels like we're saying two things at the same time. On the one hand, we're saying you deserve to get paid. On the other hand, we're saying no, you don't deserve to get paid.
I mean, he could probably find somebody that's willing to pay him for his beat now. Like it's not even.
Well, you haven't heard the beats.
I don't know. I've heard some terrible beats. I don't know. I mean, I just don't think you should have an expectation to make a living from making beats until you've really, you know, not necessarily master your craft, but like gotten good at your craft, and then, you know, develop some type of consistency, and then understand the marketing aspect.
Well, that's the hard part about a creative career, because it's not like a salaried position where you walk into a room and say, I have these qualifications, listen to my beats. All right, offer me the job. I know what I'm going to get paid. I know what my daily tasks are. It's way more subjective and confusing and vague than that. So the other thing is, I think a lot of people jump into music and think they're the greatest thing on earth and they're God's gift to everybody's eardrums. And, you know, they're not. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but those expectations are going to kill you. That's the issue. And so how do you tell somebody that they're not at that level and then them actually listen and not get emotional about it? It's hard. And then the other thing too is, how do you know when you're at that stage that you deserve to get money? I mean, I thought I was at that stage years ago, and now looking back, I'm like, damn, I really wasn't ready for the things that I thought I was ready for. So it's always hindsight, and it's always experience that teaches you exactly where you were at any point in your career and life in general, even if you thought you were further along than you actually were at that point.
Well, the good thing today is that we have, you know, whether you want to ignore them or not, but we have metrics, right?
Yeah.
We have social media metrics, we have view metrics, we have, you know, and then you could kind of catch a rhythm from like the people that reach out to you, or the people that buy your beats, or, you know, just the conversations you have, or the feedback that you get. You know, so I think at least we have better ways to find out kind of where we stand in terms of how other people perceive the quality of what we do, you know, today. And you know, some people can ignore it. I do know some creatives that ignore that stuff, and they're just like, you know, I don't care what people say, or it's like, all right, well, you know, it's real people. But yeah, so Payne, I didn't bring this up. I want to touch on it real quick, and it relates to what we've been talking about. But did you watch the Dave Chappelle like 20-minute piece that he put up on Instagram that tells the story of how, you know, he feels he got taken advantage of and got the Chappelle show taken away from him? It relates to a lot of artists.
Well, I didn't watch it, but it's all over the internet, so I assume it has to do with ownership and networks, royalties, and all that.
I think it hits home for a lot of artists because they feel they're in the same position, right? Yeah. So, you know, at a young age, you know, Comedy Central or Viacom signed him to this deal, which they kind of owned his name and likeness in perpetuity for the show. You know, he left the show, you know, so now he doesn't own the Chappelle show anymore. And the Viacom does own it, and they've cut an agreement. They cut an agreement with Netflix and with, I think, HBO Max to put the Chappelle show on, and they don't have to compensate Dave because he sold it to him outright. So legally, they don't owe him anything.
You know what this is like? That whole controversy about Taylor Swift's masters
Yeah, so that's why I think it relates to some of the stuff we were talking about, you know, a few minutes ago. And I know this podcast might run a little longer, but I think it's, you know, even if we started the conversation now, finish the next episode, I think it'll be a healthy dialogue. Because I think I don't think there's any problem with Dave's doing. Let me put that out there right now. And, you know, he's in a unique position. You know, he's probably the most popular, most loved comedian that we have today. You know, he's in a very unique position. And I just don't want people listening to what he said and think that they can do the same thing, because it's like, you know, if you agree to things, you can't eventually just be like, I don't care what I agreed to. It's not, I don't feel it's right. Dave can do that. And I think he's in his, I think it's right for him to do that because of the position he's been in, right? Because he can now he has so much influence with his audience, and his audience is so big because that's who ultimately is going to make the decision, is going to force people to make decisions, right? He can wield his audience and say, hey, don't watch my show, and they'll probably listen, and they'll force people to the table and force him, you know, to whatever bad deal he signed, you know, he didn't understand at the time, or he was desperate at the time. It's the same story that you hear with artists, right? Like, I didn't understand what perpetuity meant. I didn't understand, you know, now you don't own your art, and now you're saying that's not fair. It's not morally right. You know, so I should have asked you before we got on this podcast to watch it. But I think a lot of artists are getting hyped up seeing that, like, yeah. And that's fine if you're Dave Chappelle. You know, I think he should do what he's doing. Because I agree that it's not necessarily morally right, but contractually, that's what he agreed to. And that's, you know, that's how it's going to play out for most people. You're not going to get it back. You're not going to have the influence of Dave Chappelle to be able to kind of wield your audience to get what you want. Because, and at the time he signed that deal, there weren't very many other options. It wasn't like there was YouTube, it wasn't Netflix, it wasn't Amazon Prime, you know, so that's kind of the deal he had to sign if he wanted that opportunity on TV, because he wasn't, I mean, he was a proven stand-up, but he didn't have like another show to say, hey, look what I did with this show. In their mind, they were taking a risk putting Dave Chappelle on Comedy Central.
Yeah, I just want to know if that's standard procedure because I'm sure Seinfeld didn't get that kind of a deal.
Well, I can't. I don't.
I can't. I shouldn't say that. I'm guessing that he didn't.
Well, it's possible that he signed a deal for a certain amount of time, you know, that probably wasn't as favorable. And it's just like artists and labels. You sign your deal, hopefully make it as short as possible, kill it, and then on the re-up is when you get, you know, your true value.
But
right?
That master ownership is in perpetuity, and that's why even someone at Taylor Swift's level can't do anything. Now, granted, she understood how covering her own music is a way to sidestep. Obviously, she still doesn't get her masters back for those first couple albums, but she found a way to capitalize off of, you know, I don't know if you want to call it a legal loophole, but she found a way to do it. In television, there's not that same option. Dave Chappelle can't cover his own show episodes and say, "Oh, this is a new master recording, so now I can get my money back," and it doesn't work that way. But I'm saying even someone at the level like Taylor Swift to pop is probably what Dave Chappelle is to comedy. So even someone with that big of a fan base in the music world can't go back on whatever she signed for, because she signed away her masters, and that's why what happened.
But to me, it's a tough lesson, you know, and I think that artists or comedians, like, you know, we've not only have we heard these stories, but there's so many other options, and there's so much more leverage that you can create that you wouldn't need to sign a deal like that today. Like, you know, even in Big Josh's situation, like, we essentially want to do the same thing that Dave Chappelle has done. I mean, they're stand-ups. They want to have a sketch comedy show. Like, we're in the process of just producing our sketch comedy show ourselves and monetizing it on Facebook and YouTube. And we are happy to do that and grow our revenue that way until we find a partner that wants to partner with us and that would compensate him fairly and allow him the freedom to express himself the way he wants to express himself through his comedy. Right, we're in a totally different era with so many more options and so many ways to create leverage that this should never happen again. Like we shouldn't, fast forward 10 years, like there shouldn't be another Dave Chappelle situation, because of unless you take the deal earlier, right? Like if you don't build your own fan base and you don't, wait and you're not patient, you don't put in the work and you want the deal sooner rather than later, then you might find yourself in the same predicament. But yeah, I see a lot of people like watching this, and there's some of the comments and some where like who the comments are coming from. Again, thinking like Dave experience applies to them. Like they're gonna run up in the independent label that they just signed with, or even the major label that they just signed with no leverage, and be like and just get hyped up by what Dave's doing. Like, yeah, that's not morally right. F that. I don't care what I signed. It's like you're not Dave Chappelle. This goes back to like not everybody's advice or experience applies to you. And I think
and just stop signing stuff, guys, please. I mean, I don't know how many producers I've run into that have signed things and then after the fact, and maybe even years after the fact, realize what they signed. And it's hard for me to empathize if you weren't a child when you signed it, if someone wasn't coercing or threatening you to sign it, or if you didn't have some kind of cognitive disability or intellectual impairment when you signed it. I don't know.
Well, the thing that does happen sometimes that happened to Dave, and he basically he compared it to an experience of him getting fooled at it's called 3-card Monty, right? When you do the cards and so he basically was like, he had $60 to his name and he was watching the dude playing 3-card Monty for a while. So he figured that he could play and win because he knew which card was the card he needed to flip over. I think he saw a bend in it or whatever. So, he played, put his last $60 up and actually lost. And what he realized is like everybody around the 3-card Monty, like even the people hyping him up, were in on it. Right. So, you could potentially be in a situation at a label. It may be that I think you had this experience where the lawyer, they may not work for the label, but they're extremely friendly with the label.
Yep.
So there's other dynamics in place of like that lawyer's relationship with the label. So your lawyer's thinking about his or her relationship with the label in addition to negotiating your contract, which is clouding his judgment.
It's a conflict of interest. And that lawyer didn't care, whether or not I ate or starved. But at the same time, was I prepared? Had I done my research? Was I rushing things? Was I being manipulated? And could someone else have explained that to me? Yeah. So it's hard.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it'd be very hard. I'm not saying that I couldn't get duped and I couldn't sign anything that I necessarily, but it'd be a hell of a lot harder. Like being in the entertainment industry, for 10 years, it'd be a hell of a lot harder to put me in a bad deal than it would have been in 2008. And I think, that experience in the education, and the network, protects you from getting in those situations.
Yeah, I guess I don't even know if, like I said, it's hard for me to say one thing or another because we did have that conversation about the history of the music business and how exploitative and tricky it's been, and especially exploiting people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or whatever the case was. Like people know how to exploit your current financial situation or your lack of knowledge just to get you to sign something fast without fully understanding it. And granted, yeah, that is your responsibility because it's still your signature and it's still your decision, but there's that moral element, and you got to protect yourself, but at the same time, if someone is tricking you, they're tricking you, and it's It's a tough situation. You know, whose side are you on? I mean, I never want to be on the side of immorality at all, so I'm not. But I I do want people to protect themselves better.
Yep. So keep rocking with us. Keep rocking with the Music Entrepreneur Club, because hopefully people are learning some things that keep them out of some sticky situations. And I will be working on a project soon, which will be exploring a lot about the music industry. Can't give too many details now because, like I tweeted the other day, sometimes you celebrate things on Twitter too early. And in the music industry, you just never know, what things are actually going to happen and what things aren't.
Is
You know,
this
I've
what I
seen,
think it is?
yeah, I've seen so many artists like celebrate shit that just didn't happen, and because that always happens in the music, and that's like, unless you're already shooting it, unless you already got paid, don't
Even
celebrate.
then, if you get paid, they can still just decide not to put something out.
Yeah, nah, it's tough, man. And it can be embarrassing to share things that don't eventually happen. But then you can also mess. I think even more important than that, like you need to share things when you're allowed to, because you could mess up a relationship. Be like, yo, I didn't tell you to share that yet. We got to be on the same page. So be careful with the things you share and how soon you share them. Because you could mess up that opportunity.
Absolutely. So every Monday and Thursday, our music business mentorship program hosts free sessions through BeatStars Live. There's a number that you can text to get alerted when we go live. Dame knows that number by heart.
It's 844-206-7800. So text MEC to 844-206-7800.
Dope. We'll catch you on episode 176.
Peace.